Warning, the podcast you are about to listen to will contain explicit language,
See, that's bullshit. I think that's just absolute bullshit.
suggestive topics,
Dating apps are just for sex. That's ridiculous. Not for anything else.
and outright absurdity.
No, you're lying if you've never been attracted to a cartoon. You're lying to me.
The POV Podcast starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hey there, this is the POV Podcast where we give potentially dangerous romantic advice. I'm Reed Leday.
And I'm Maddy Forsyth.
All right, so today we're talking about libido, otherwise known as sex drive. That's how most people are going to know this, so we're going to go with that. And so sex drive, a lot of people don't want to talk about sex. They get uncomfortable when they talk about sex. They kind of, from an early age, they think it's a little too inappropriate to talk to about with friends, and then whenever they get a partner, they don't really talk about sex. Then they have sex, but they don't talk about it. And so I think that's something that can change throughout. Like now that we're kind of in an era where everybody's open and talking about things, and nobody's really holding emotions in anymore. At least I can feel like that's the way that this generation, that Gen Z is going, where they're very open about things. And so hopefully this is a topic that will start to become a more of an open topic. And so we'll start that off. Me and you. We'll be the ones that start off talking about sex.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Let's see how it goes. All right. So to start off, we know there's a stereotype with sex drive. What is it?
Men have a bigger sex drive
There
than
it
women.
is. Yeah. So that's the stereotype. Guys have a higher sex drive than women. And it gets to the point where, have you ever seen That 70s Show? There's a quote where Ashton Kutcher tells Mila Kunis's character, and he says, "It's almost like you never want to have sex with me," or something like that. And she goes, "No, I do want to have sex." He says, "Why aren't we doing it right now?" And like that, it's a whole thing. And it's basically making fun of that situation, that stereotype that guys have a higher sex drive, which I think I get why that is. I get why that's the stereotype, but I do think it's a little unfair to generalize all men that.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I think men obviously have a higher sex drive because they have more testosterone, which is just like scientific.
Yeah, scientifically.
Like, even in like experience and stuff, like I wouldn't say all men, but most men, sometimes that's the only thing they want from women. But like most times, that's not what women only want. They normally want a relationship.
They want
but
they
that's
want it
not
further.
all. Like, I know people who just want hookups and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I have friends that, I mean, we're talking years ago at this point, but I've had a friend where he said, yeah, I went on a date. I could care less if the date ended in sex, you know?
Yeah.
And, there are guys out there that aren't like high sex drive driven. They're not just sex all the time.
Like, they want a relationship.
Yeah, they're not trying to have sex every day, all day. They're not sitting there watching, like, single guys aren't sitting there watching porn 24 hours a day. There are guys out there. So that's the only reason I don't, I get the stereotype, and it may be true. Like you said, like scientifically, just there's more testosterone there. It just happens. But I do think that it's a little unfair to the male gender, or, you know, all the genders that aren't women.
I agree.
I don't know how many there are. But so yeah, I think that's just a little bit unfair, but I do think it's maybe not necessarily false. And I think also in America, I think it's much larger of a topic than it is other places. How do you feel about our society handles sex?
I feel like now people just kind of openly talk about it. They don't find it as sentimental thing anymore. Parents will be like, don't speak about it, don't talk about it. Like, if it comes on the TV, it's like you don't even want to look at it, skip over that part if you're with your family. Our age, like kids, I mean, at work we're talking about stuff with like our partners and stuff. So I feel like it's way more comfortable.
Yeah. I think you're right when you said like nowadays we talk about it more. I do think that's true because you got shows like Euphoria, and you're talking about, like, I get that. Maybe I'm just older and I didn't see these type of shows when I was younger. Yeah. But these type of shows, Euphoria, very like graphic sex. Yeah. Shameless, pretty graphic sex.
The whole show.
Like a lot of these kind of shows, and like these shows they're not just popular. They're trending on social media. They're getting stories written on news. You know, like it's a topic that's being talked about a lot. And I think America is just such a young country that we don't have these traditions, let's say. Whereas if you go to, I really don't want to like pinpoint a place. But
Yeah.
if you go to somewhere that's been established, like they have a established tradition and a culture on how they do things. Like talk about if you go to a place where they're very, conservative, like no sex before marriage.
Yeah.
I know in America that sounds crazy to us. Almost nobody's doing that anymore. If you go to like India, I'm sure they still have these hard traditions where you follow them, or or you're you're probably gonna get in trouble. I think America just being such a young country, it's almost like we're the youngest child, but we just get to do whatever we want, Like I was the youngest. Were you the youngest?
I'm middle.
So I was the youngest. I got to basically do whatever I want. So that's kind of how America is a little bit. We're just doing whatever we want. And so I think that we don't have these traditions that a lot of other countries have. And so our sex drive is just naturally higher because we're not afraid to talk about it. We were never told not to talk about it. We were never told, hey, you have to follow it this way. Like I know there's religion in early America, like I get that, that was a thing, but kind of grew out of it. And I do have a quote here that proves that. Let's see, I'm gonna pull it up. Here we go. In a direct survey, the frequency of sexual intercourse between sexually active 16 to 45-year-olds, the average American respondent had sex 138 times a year. Get some, America, right? And that's more frequently than any other country except for France, because City of Love. Mm-hmm. They win. So we're number 2 in sexually active countries. So I think that's just, it's kind of hard to ignore it at this point in our society. But how do you feel the older generation, the parents, are reacting to this kind of cultural shift in how sex is perceived? And like, how do you feel about, how do you think like your parents or the older generation is feeling about this?
My parents are pretty young, so I'm probably going to think about my grandparents. My grandparents probably are not okay with it. They, they got married at like 16, but like, God. They didn't have kids until they were way older. We don't get married till we're 20 something. So like the fact that everyone's just like putting it on shows and stuff, like I feel like that would make them so uncomfortable. They wouldn't want to watch shows. Or like my parents, they'll watch the shows, but if they watch the shows with sex in it, they're watching it in their room away from us. Like they don't want to be around us with that.
Right. Yeah, they don't want, they're like, no, we can't show sex because they don't know what sex is. There's no way that they're having sex. Yeah, I think the older generation they're going to have to get, it's I don't think it's slowing down, is what I'm saying.
It's not.
Euphoria, Grammy Award winning show, it's not slowing down. Mm-mm. So, yeah. I think the older generation is going to have to kind of culturally accept that this is the new norm and that it's probably not going anywhere. But I also think that a reason that the older people, not even just like their generation, just older people in general, like once they hit like in their upper 40s to 50s, I think that they're disinterested in these shows that have a bunch of sex in it, and they're like maybe grossed out about it because their sex drive has taken a dip. So it doesn't interest them as much as it would. Yeah. Somebody, if you show a 15-year-old kid porn, whoa, he's gonna lose his fucking mind. He's like, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. If you show a 50-year-old man porn, he's gonna be like, he's like, that's someone's daughter. That's gross. Get this out of my face. Like it's just, so I think that's another reason why they probably think that. So how much of an effect do you think age takes on sex drive?
I think it's a really big effect. Like, if my grandparents were like having sex all the time, like that would be weird. Like they're just too old for that.
In their 70s, 80s, just going at it. So where do you think like the peak is, and like when do you think the dip starts to happen?
I would probably say like 60, 70, maybe. Because I feel like my parents would still be like
60. You think the dip doesn't happen until 60?
Yeah, because I mean, maybe it would dip a little bit earlier, but like not fully.
Okay, all right. So where do you think the peak is? Like, where do you think, in the teens, or do you think it's in the like the mid 20s, where the peak of like your sex drive would be?
Probably mid 20s.
All right. So we're not there. Oh, I'm there yet, technically. I'm almost there. I'm 23, 24, so I'm getting to the peak, I guess. So you got some ways to go.
I do.
But yeah, I think that's fairly accurate, I would say. I do have a quote from an article, and the only part about this article that I didn't agree with was that it only talked about male sex drive after a certain age. Not so women. I can't quite say for the women on if this is right, but this is from Lloyd's Pharmacy, and it says So it says science things, testosterone, blah, 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 blah. And it says, between the ages of 30 and 40, a man's testosterone level will fall about 1% every year, which isn't really that much. And then after the age of 40, it just kind of takes a noticeable dip every time. So 30 to 40, you're starting to lose a little bit. And then after 40, it starts to take a dip, which is surprising to me because like you said,
really early.
You said
like
60s.
I thought it'd be later.
Like I thought 60s was old, but I was thinking like right in the middle, kind of like that early 50s age would have been like when they dip off because I feel, you know, you get married, you're having sex, you have kids, that kills sex drive a lot right there. And then once the kids get out of there, I would say most people are probably going to be around like their 50s whenever their kids grow up and graduate and leave. And so I would think that there would be that little bit of sex drive right at the end, like right at the end. And then like in that 50s, it would start to dip again. But to 40? Jeez, man, like that's crazy early. That 40, means
you only got like 20 years.
I mean, goddamn. What's gonna happen to me in 17 years and I'm not gonna like sex anymore? Who knows? But yeah, that's crazy to me that it's that young. And I think the peak is a little bit earlier than what you said. I think early 20s. I think it's
kind of like a span. Like it kind of depends for everybody too.
There's no set in stone. Thing about it.
Around your 20s, I would say.
Yeah, somewhere in the early 20s. I think it's got to be that college age.
Yeah.
That 18 to 21, just because you're getting that freedom for the first time. You're getting that freedom. You don't have your parents around, or most people. I know people commute. I know people live with their parents. I did it, so I just feel getting that freedom and being able to do whatever the fuck you want. You know, you're skipping classes, you're having sex, you're doing whatever you want, and so. It's just like an extra energy and excitement. Like the testosterone and like your dopamine levels are just through the roof whenever you have all these things that you never would have done before. So I think it's a little bit earlier, but like I said, it's a span. We're generally agreeing that it's going to be within 18 to like 26.
Yeah.
And then after that, you'll kind of be normal. And then apparently at 40, you're no more sex. Get out of here, bro. Get out of here with your vagina. I don't need it no more after 40. Me and my sports and beer. All right. So here's one that me and you can both have. We both have experience with this. Does your sex drive change whether you're single or in a relationship? And I'll let you go first.
Mine, I feel like changes when I am in a relationship. And I think it's honestly because I'm more comfortable with this person. I know what they like. They know what I like. Like, you actually know each other. Like, you have those feelings for each other. Rather than if I'm single, you're just doing a hookup. Like, it's just like, you're doing it and then you're done. They don't care if you're enjoying it. They don't really, they just do it for their pleasure. Like, it's just like, you have more of like a sentimental feeling when you're in a relationship. And I feel like that makes it way better.
Yeah, I think, because how about like, okay, so you're still in a relatively new relationship. Was there a noticeable change in your sex drive before you were dating him?
Yeah.
To now? Like now your sex drive is obviously higher?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And I feel like it's because I actually have feelings for him. Like it's just like I want to do it more because of those feelings.
Right. Do you think, because you had mentioned earlier, they're only doing it for their pleasure. They don't really care if you enjoy it. Are you more talking about male to female?
Yes.
Because guys are going to get their enjoyment almost every time.
That's what I'm saying. Like
very rarely is a guy going to go in there and not enjoy sex. They're not, like, most guys are they're passing the finish line. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
So you're saying that hookups and one night stands,
the guys are just going to finish and then they're going to leave. Like that's basically what it is.
Guys said, let me get my 90 seconds, get up out of here, bro.
Yeah. And that's not very good for girls.
Not a turn on, a turn on. For me, I don't know if my sex drive took necessarily a big jump or a big dip. Certainly the idea of being able to have sex frequently was exciting.
Yeah.
But in general, I think my sex drive was already relatively high. I just wasn't having sex.
I kind of say the same.
Yeah, I just wasn't having sex. Like, I didn't have sex until I was 18. Throughout high school, I never really worried about sex.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting fucked up at parties.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the best mindset to have, but that was my mindset. I was just getting fucked up at parties. I did my college years in high school. So then once I got to college, I didn't really care about the partying, and then I started dating my girlfriend. But my sex drive was I wasn't having sex in high school, but I was still watching porn, and I was still pretty like actively turned on by things.
Yeah.
I just wasn't doing the act. So my sex drive didn't necessarily go higher. It was just my sex drive was more satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because
yeah, I know what you mean.
Because I always had the sex drive, it just wasn't being met until I got in a relationship, and it was able to be this frequent thing. And so going from if it rises to if it dips in a relationship, we both agreed that it should rise a little bit just because you
have somebody.
Yeah, you have somebody, and it's unless you're like friends with benefits, which I mean at that point that's a relationship in itself. It's not a traditional relationship, but it's a relationship. But that's for a different one. That's for a different podcast. But so it rises a little bit when you're in a relationship. How do you react to difference of sex drives in a relationship? I don't know if you and your boyfriend have different sex drives, but say you have a higher sex drive than him. How would y'all handle that?
I feel like normally the man would have a higher sex drive.
Okay, but yeah, in this scenario, if you have the higher sex drive, if you're saying, "Hey, babe, let's do it," and he's like, "Not tonight." How do you handle the situation if one of y'all has a higher sex drive than the other?
I mean, you would just have to talk about it. Like
what would the conversation go? Like, how would you bring that up?
I would be like, I feel like you never want to do anything like as much as I do, but I feel like you would have to make like compromise, like to satisfy both people's needs. And I mean, you just have to literally say how you feel. You have to just tell them when you want to and when you don't. Like
there has to be a clear communication point. Hey, I know we both have different sex drives, but hey, this is, we're in a relationship. We have to compromise. Mine's higher than yours. Sometimes you're going to have to do it whenever I want to. Sometimes I'm going to have to sit back and not do it whenever I want to. Yeah. There has to be that compromise. Yeah. And I will say that I have quite a personal experience with this. Me and Maggie did get into a handful of arguments over this early in our relationship because we had the pandemic, we had the quarantine, we had our honeymoon phase all over each other. We were doing it all the time. And even though she was still living with her mom, and we didn't care. We were doing it all the time. And it was great. And then honeymoon phase ends. Take that dip. Pandemic's over, so we're not living with each other, basically. Like, we're back to work, back to school. We're not seeing each other. The sex drive takes a dip, and so I get noticeably frustrated. Yeah. And I'm pretty good at communicating. You know this. Yeah. I'm very good at expressing and being reasonable and logical about situations. I don't lead with my emotions. I'm very calculated. I'm like, hey, okay, so this is what's going on. Here's how I feel about it. And so what happened was I noticed that we weren't having sex as often, and she would get annoyed because I wanted it every night. She said, all you want to do is have sex every night. Every night you want to have sex. And I said, okay, I won't make the first move. Fair. Week and a half, 2 weeks go by. We don't have sex at all because I don't make the first move. So it was like a little test experiment that I did. Yeah. And I tell her, I said, hey, it's been 2 weeks. I didn't make the first move. Look what's happened. We haven't had sex. And then so we get in an argument. And I said, in the argument, I said, it's almost like we're just friends now. And she damn near had a breakdown because in the moment, I was like, yeah, like, if we're not having sex, we're just basically in a friendship. Like, there's nothing. And so whenever I said that, it just killed her. And I was like, oh, man.
I mean, that makes her feel like it's just about sex.
Yeah. So I in the moment, I didn't realize how hurtful that was going to be. But after that explosion of an argument we had, that's really whenever we had our compromise. We said, hey, obviously I had a higher sex drive than her. And I had to account for that. And to her point, and to your point, she had to compromise as well. She had to say, okay, hey, I may not want to do it all the time. I may not be this sexually driven as he is, but I know that he finds that important in a relationship, which I think sex is important in a relationship. Yeah. It makes it's one of the points in a relationship. There was a comedian, he goes, look, I don't buy a house for the bathroom, but if my toilet was missing, I'd be pretty fucking upset about it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's still nice to have there. So that compromise in a relationship needs to happen. And as I was talking about at the very beginning of this podcast, saying, hey, it needs to be communicated what your sex drive is in a relationship. Yeah. Like it needs to be open talking about. Yeah. And so having that compromise, and now we're at a point where, yeah, we know exactly what each other wants and how each other feels about that situation. And I know I put you in a scenario, not really realistic. Do y'all have different sex drives, or is it basically the same?
I feel like we're still in the honeymoon phase.
Still in the honeymoon? How long y'all been dating?
5 months.
5 months? Not even half a year?
No.
Hey, I'll tell you what. Don't do anything for 6 months. Don't do the celebration. Are y'all doing monthly celebrations?
Not really.
Thank God. That shit's so stupid.
But I agree. Unless it's like a year or whatever.
But I'd say years are whenever they're important, yeah.
But we're not to the point where we need to have that conversation. It's kind of just like, we want to do it when we're with each other. I feel like we both have the same sex drive that I can tell right now.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we just do it when we can, honestly. Like, it's just... but
doing it fucking like rabbits, Reed. Fucking...
But, like, we don't have to do it.
All right, so... let me know what happens. I mean, you don't need to let me know, but whenever y'all do have that conversation, I'm sure it'll come up.
I'm not excited for that.
I'm sure it will come up. Maybe after this podcast, just every time you look at him, it's like, this motherfucker.
It's gonna come eventually.
All he wants to do is have sex with me now. Now that I think about it. Now that I put it in your head, huh? All right. So one more thing before we close out the podcast, we'll do how drugs affect the sex drive. Do you think drugs have an effect on a sex drive?
What kind of drugs?
Any recreational drugs, weed, alcohol, nicotine, shrooms, LSD, like all of them.
I mean, I feel like weed does. If someone is high, then they're gonna want to do it.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like...
Have you ever been high?
Yes.
Yeah?
And it makes me and my boyfriend want to do it more. I don't know
weird.
why.
That's weird.
I feel like it should be the opposite. Like, I feel like you'd want to just chill and like...
Yeah, I don't really have... My sex drive isn't super high whenever I'm high. I hate that I just did that. But yeah, I would say alcohol boosts my sex drive more than weed. I
feel like both boost ours.
Yeah?
I don't know why. It might just be because...
I think it's because of the the dopamine levels and releases all that. And I do have a quote right here where it says that this is from Blue Heart. It says dopamine and testosterone levels will temporarily rise under alcohol, but at the end of things, alcohol and like drugs that release testosterone and dopamine like this will eventually, in the long run, start to kill your sex drive, which is why, going back to the 40-year-old thing, now that I'm thinking about it, that might be why it starts to dip so early. Because how many people are out here drinking and smoking all the time? That's like, if you're not drinking and smoking in your 20s and 30s, I mean, I don't know too many people that are clean sober in their 20s. That's so most people are taking that into effect. I will say, my sex drive isn't super active whenever I'm high, but whenever it does happen after I smoke weed,
it happens.
Burst through that finish line. I tell you what, it is crazy. If you ain't crossed the finish line under weed, I highly recommend it. It's amazing. It's fantastic. Alcohol, on the other hand, sometimes I get distracted while I'm on alcohol. I just be going, and I was like, man, am I gonna finish? Like, this is crazy. How long has it been? Just be looking at the clock, like, fucking, what's on TV right now? Gordon Ramsay?
Oh my God.
What's he trying to whip together over there? But yeah, so I would say do it, but be cautious because as science is telling us that it's gonna take a dip if you're doing it. But live it up, live it up. Have sex when you're high, have sex when you're drunk. It'll be fun. No, not too much though, because then there's you'll go to jail.
Yeah.
You don't want to go to jail for this. So I think that will do it for us. All right, and welcome to the No-Brainer segment where we ask each other 3 questions in a rapid succession. No time to think about the answer. We just got to answer right away. Ready?
Yep.
All right, this one's for Maddy first. Foreplay or right to the action?
I feel like you need foreplay.
Gotta have it?
Yeah.
All right. Quiet or loud?
Loud.
Ooh. All right, okay. And last one, when is it too late to do it?
Never.
Never?
Never.
Come on, 3. Let's go over these answers. So you need foreplay. You're telling me 3 a.m. Yeah. 3 a.m. comes up. Gotta have foreplay.
Okay, no. No, but it's never too late, but you might not need foreplay.
Okay. You just preferably foreplay. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So the quiet or loud one, I think that one changes whether you're living alone or not. Because
I agree.
Me and Maggie, like, the only time we're alone is if we go on like a vacation or the house happens to be empty. Yeah. Other than that, we're trying to be quiet. I don't want our mom hearing us having sex.
I have an apartment, so like it's different for me.
Yeah, and you said your roommate's almost never there, so y'all just fucking banging through the walls, huh? Mm-hmm. So those are my questions. Some interesting answers. Just figured out Maddie's out here yelling through walls.
Not that loud. It's like.
You ever, overheard people having sex?
Oh yeah, my neighbors, and it's disgusting.
It's so weird. I get so like I don't get uncomfortable about it, but like I'll like always nudge to Maggie. Like back whenever her brother was living there, and I would overhear him and his girlfriend. I'm like, Maggie.
I just put my AirPods in and
Maggie, they're doing the do. What do we do? What do we do here? Yeah, it's just
it's gross.
It's a weird situation.
It's gross.
But all right,
you ready for yours?
I am.
All right, doggy or missionary?
Doggy.
Belts or handcuffs?
Belts.
What's a normal amount of hoo-ha for a week?
4 times a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I guess that's more of my mindset now with the compromise, because obviously 7 days a week would be nice.
Yeah.
But now understanding the compromise, the 4 is plenty. 4 is plenty. But yeah, belts before handcuffs. Not gonna say whether I've used one or not, but I certainly haven't used both. So I'll leave it at that. So that's a wrap on today's show. And remember, I'm the loud idiot.
And I'm the sensible queen.
Thank you for listening to the POV Podcast.
We'll see y'all next time.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the POV Podcast. We hope you found it helpful, and if not, we hope you at least got out with a few brain cells left. For more, you can tune in weekly on Spotify.